Welcome to the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys, sponsored by Checker, background screens for your faith or volunteer organization. The Church Safety Guys is a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to inspire, influence, and impact church safety and security teams. We are protectors, guardians, ambassadors, and shepherds. We are about all things church safety and security, which starts with a ministry mindset and a servant's heart. Join us for the next hour as the Church Safety Guys unpack safety, security, leadership, and ministry operations with your hosts, James McGarvey, Paul Buckner, and Mike Scully. This broadcast is also available on social media, YouTube, your favorite podcast platforms, and on the all-new Church Security app.
Well, good evening and welcome to the Church Safety and Security broadcast. I am your host, James McGarvey, and I am joined tonight by my co-hosts, Mike and Paul. How are you guys doing?
Hey guys. Not too bad. Good, sir. It's good to see you, Jim.
So I just wanted to take a moment. There's been a lot going on this week, I know, in politics and across military zones and military areas. And while we don't get into a lot of politics on this broadcast, we never have. That's not the point. We do very much respect the military and certainly appreciate their sacrifice. And so it's with that remembrance that we remember the folks that were lost this past week in an effort to support our country, our ideals, and certainly wanted to remember them this evening. So thank you for joining us. You are welcome to visit churchsafetyguys.com anytime to reach out to us. If you have resource needs, we're more than happy to do that. If you're watching at a later time on YouTube, you can click the like and subscribe button in the lower right hand corner. Got to remember where my camera is. And then whenever we come out with new content, we will give you or send you that alert. So definitely a crazy day. I don't know how you guys are. I'm beat. I've had a long day, and I don't have a lot going on at our church. I don't have the stamina or the censorship at the moment to reveal all of that online. You guys will hear that story probably, I don't know, maybe a couple months down the road, or maybe at the conference if you come to the Church Security Essentials.
We're saving it for the conference. You have RSVP to hear the story.
So, but Paul, you were going to say something.
Just quickly, now is a huge opportunity. It's a time that we really need to check in on our Afghan veterans. We fought a conflict there for 20 years. And on the upside of this, an entire generation of people came up free to worship. There are a ton of Christians in Afghanistan. We need to be praying for them. Salvation came to Afghanistan, schools, all kinds of logistics, a much better life. An enormous mistake, and I'm just going to say it, was made in the way things were handled. And we need to be praying for our Afghan veterans because a lot of them feel cheated. A lot of them feel betrayed. And sure. I have a friend that he's such a proud Afghan veteran that on the front of his law enforcement uniform, it has the symbol for Afghan veteran, and then it actually says Afghanistan veteran. And it's very hard on him. And I told him, I said, you need to get away from social media and you need to get away from the news because he's deep diving into this and it's breaking his heart. He's like, Paul, people I know are going to die because of how this was handled. So without being political, now is the time, very, 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 very much the time. And John makes a great point from the green room over here talking about family leaving Saigon on one of the last helicopters from the U.S. Embassy. This isn't the first time this has happened, and that's a great point, John. But now is the time to pray for our veterans and especially to check in on your Afghan veterans because it's a very challenging thing to see something you worked for, bled for, and lost friends for go. And we have to remember that God's still in control. He's still in charge, and ultimately this will lead to prophecy being fulfilled and the second coming of our Lord and Savior.
It is rough for sure. I've never been in the military, so I'm not going to pretend to understand that. I do know most of the individuals that I grew up with, even through high school, went into the military and went over to Afghanistan at some point. And I certainly, for those of you that don't know, I currently my Monday through Friday job, not church safety, is working with the Defense Department. So from that aspect, we've certainly seen a lot of things, and it's there needs to be prayer all around. It's very easy to jump on social media for sure and be critical and not understanding, but there are heroes right now. There are people that are going above and beyond,
Amen.
whether they're military or not, to reach out to those that are in need. And so we definitely need to respect, but absolutely reach out to the folks that personally were involved in that, because they need just as much support as our regular military does. And that is one thing. I mean, we have always been we're always pro military, pro first responders. I mean, honestly, between the three of us, I think we have close to 70 years first responder experience. So,
hey, don't call me old. What are you talking about?
So, Mike, did you want to add anything before I bring our guest in?
I'd echo your it's kind of one of those foggy weekends, and I don't mean the weather. It just, it feels like need a weekend from the weekend, and not because it
For
was
sure.
celebration and excitement and fun. It's just one of those mind fogs, and it's just so much going on in the world. And I think some of that in our opener is part of that. Some of what you've just been talking on, some of it's just what's going on in our churches. Where do we go next? And heck, I got just anecdotally this afternoon, it's like, what the heck is happening to the price of phones? I'm like walking to try to upgrade my phone for the first time since let's see, I have an iPhone 7, so let's just say that's what I'm carrying now. And I'm like, wait a minute, $1,000 to replace a phone? Really? And
part of that I know is the chip issue. Like, that's been in the news. Like, we've had issues. You're a tech guy. You're I'm sure you've been following that, but yeah, I don't know. I agree with you 100% on that. I feel like when I look at the weekend, etc., I always feel like I need another couple of days to recoup. And let's face it, we're always and we're the same way in person. So if you come out to the Church Security Essentials Conference in October 2nd, you'll see us the same way. But I'm not going to lie, I'm tired. You go through the highs and lows of responding to incidents with your church on a regular basis, and everybody that's listening can relate to that, because you go through adrenaline dumps and all this other fun stuff that you get home and you like crash. And my wife's like, when I walk in the door from church, she's pretty cool, but she usually like looks at me and she's like, "Oh, was that one of those Sundays, huh?"
Checks the wind.
So, but craziness. So anyhow, I want to go ahead and without further eloquence, bring in our guest tonight. And he's a pretty cool guy. Hey, he's sleeping. What? Hey, John.
He had a near-death experience today in a pool. So
his floaty collapsed. So we thought we were going to have to go without a guest tonight, because he was like pool or
right.
Pool or hang out with cool people. I
That's
don't.
Right.
And instead of the cool people, he chose to hang out with us. So awesome.
No, he chose to hang out with you, Paul.
It was tough. It's 90-some degrees. My pool thermometer said the water was like 84, 86. It just an amazing. It was just a wonderful, pure Michigan day, and it hit me like, oh man, I can't be in here all day. I got to get up and be part of the church safety guys. Oh, no.
So last night, I'm out yesterday. We've had the same weather down in Ohio, and last evening, was building a picnic table for my family, like for our backyard, and I'm putting all this together. And of course, I'm thinking as soon as the sun goes down, it's going to be cooler, which wasn't the case.
No.
And
No.
I come in and literally my shirt is completely soaked, and I'm soaked, and my kids are like, "Hey, Dad, what do you think about getting a pool?" And I'm like, "You timed that well."
Yeah. Well played.
For sure. Well played. So anyhow, tonight we appreciate you joining us, John.
Yep.
We'll kind of go down the rabbit hole of trying to do something productive in the next hour. But I wanted to talk a little bit tonight. We talk a lot in the groups about like bag checks and red flags and how we handle situations and that sort of thing. And I wanted to chat about that a little bit because a lot of times in those groups that communication gets missed and it gets overlooked that every church is different. And as we serve in different churches, what's normal for my church is not normal for the three of your churches.
Right.
And a lot of times, I think, we have to be careful, but I think a lot of times when we generalize and say, hey, this works, this is a best practice for everybody, a lot of times folks can get defensive because they're like, well, wait a second, that would never work at my church. We can't do that. So I want to talk a little bit about that tonight with you guys, but I also want to talk a little bit about, there are certain things like de-escalation that it doesn't matter, right? You can be kind to anybody regardless. So you can learn skills to do things that benefit your church, short and long term regardless. And it doesn't matter what church, you're going to or how things run. But I will throw it over to you, John. So what do you think some of the things like with de-escalation, what are some of the things that you think carry over regardless?
How to simply approach people. This is actually an issue that I encounter not only in my church, but a lot of other churches that I talk to and so on, that if you're not careful about the way you simply approach someone, you can actually inadvertently escalate and create a situation where none even existed. Quick story.
Sure.
A buddy of mine, still a GRPD officer, a few years ago when he was telling me that he got off work Sunday morning after working a 12-hour shift, went to meet his wife at church. They had just started attending a smaller church. As he pulls into the parking lot, place is relatively full. He finds a spot. As he's getting out, he hears a voice call out to him, "Hey, you can't park there." My buddy turns around, sees one of the parking lot volunteer attendants approaching him, and the gentleman reiterates, "You cannot park there." My buddy makes a comment that, hey, the place is full, and kind of expects this gentleman to help him find a parking spot. And the man just simply says, "I don't know, but you can't park there." And in a flash, my buddy said he felt angry, defensive, agitated. And of course, he just got off a 12-hour shift. And he said, "John, it wasn't so much that I couldn't park there. I get it. But where was the ministry? It was how he was talking to me, the tone of voice, the body language and all that. Where was the friendly greeting? Hey, good morning. Welcome to church. Sir, you can't park right there, but if you come with me, I'm going to help you find a spot to park."
Amen.
Sure.
3 seconds to say that. And so what I share with a lot of other churches and all that is, how many times in the last year have our people, meaning well, inadvertently turned away people because they didn't realize they were coming across antagonistic, confrontational, or just unfriendly? And I'll give this guy at this church a benefit of the doubt. Probably an awesome guy, volunteers to help out, and maybe he was having a bad day. I don't know, but he just didn't come across right. And so one of the things I share with different churches and all that, part of de-escalating a situation is making sure you're not saying or doing something in the first place that could potentially escalate a situation. And I find that a lot.
Well, it's kind of funny. I'm going to jump in here and then I'll throw it to Paul. But I've mentioned to churches before, just how you carry yourself. I think I've shared the story with you guys before of, when I do a sweep, a lot of times my face expressions are more serious. Like I'm focused, and I've had folks come up to me and be alarmed because they see that and they're like, oh my goodness, what's going on? You look so serious. And what I've realized is that giving that impression, I have to adjust that. Like mentally, I have to be like, okay, so when I stand there, at a post or I'm doing something and I've got my hands on my hips, yeah, I mean, that's a lot of people, obviously for obvious reasons, a lot of folks think that I'm a police officer with how I dress, how I stand, how I present myself. And I know, the other guys get this a lot too, but the reality is standing there with your hands on your hips, it can be kind of aggressive too. So we have to constantly be like watching ourselves to make sure that we're not presenting an image that isn't welcoming, that gives that defensive overtone. Paul, you wanted to jump in.
This is actually it's really pertinent because I tell my parking lot team that we're the pre-first impressions team.
Exactly.
So we're the pre-door greeters, and we get people like I had a lady today. We had no room in the parking lot, and the service ran over. So that means overflow parking. And I'm motioning like right here, and she's actually closer to the church if she'll just go right here. And she goes, okay, you're welcome to drive the parking lot that I have an auditory confirmation from my guys is full. Guess who had to come all the way back around and out and park in overflow? And some people will have to learn the hard way. It's fine. I'm not going to get in an argument with her. She's driving an SUV. And but I tell my guys, smile, wave, give thumbs up, mouth the words thank you. And we have problems where overflow parking, when everybody's leaving, we have to stop traffic and let those folks out because there's no way for them to get out unless we open a hole. And I walk up and say, hey, since you're kind of stuck in traffic, can I let 2 or 3 cars in? Oh, yeah, that's great. Thanks. Nobody ever says no, but I don't walk out and go, and then you were talking about how you approach people. I had a guy today. He moved up here from Texas. I would say he probably has a gang background. He's trying to start his life over. He's looking for his nephew. He's wanting to go back into our kids area. And I'm prayerfully thinking about, and John, I'd love your critique. I'm prayerfully thinking about how to approach it. I'm super friendly. Everything was always friendly. I got his name. We shook hands. We talked. But he's wanting to go back there and look. And he's looking as far as he can see in there for his nephew. And I said, well, I'm going to tell you one of the things that you're going to love about this church is we take the safety of our children extremely seriously. And I said, what you're going to love is nobody can go back there unless they've been background checked and they're part of that ministry, or their mom or dad. And he's like, wow. And I said, you just never know what's in somebody's heart. And I said, so we protect our kids. They get to have a blast. And then after the service, they get to come out. And he's like, oh, cool. I didn't have to tell him you can't go back there. And it was going to come down to that. But I was able to formulate it by the grace of God. I'll give the Holy Spirit credit as a positive. And I was able to sell him on the fact that nobody can go back there, brother. And so I was trying to get ahead of it and shut the train down before we got to the bridge.
And that's exactly what I would advocate and encourage people to do. You can, whenever you use what I call a hard no, that can really offend somebody and trigger somebody. No, you can't go back there. However, if you take a moment to take the back door and explain it to them, they can figure it out. Oh, I can't go back there because blah, 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 blah. Talking about appearances, there is in all these church security safety forums, there's a big debate for church, especially armed security. Do I wear something that lets people see and know that I am security, or do I blend in or wear nothing? Right? I mean, this is as a fierce debate as the old 9mm 45 ACP debate used to be. Okay. Now, I personally go down the middle.
We all know that 40 is the best caliber. So,
well, I've recently converted to 9mm myself. Hey, but now here's the bottom line. Now,
I'm feeling threatened.
I try to remind people, hello, guys, it's ministry. You don't necessarily have to let people know your security, but you got to let them know you're a representative of the church. And I smile because I just recently had this conversation with someone who came up to me and was telling me how easy it was to identify the security people. The very same people who are so gung-ho about making sure they are not identified as security are the most easily picked out, because they're the ones quietly, stoically standing off to at the wall, looking all serious with their arms crossed. So
Right.
in their minds, they're not noticed. Dude, you are so noticed. And they come up and folks come up to me, John, I just went to this church. It was really funny. I could tell how many security people they had just because the expression on their face, their little piggly wiggly earpieces, and they're standing off in the corners. They're not smiling.
Well,
and it's supposed to be ministry, people. Have a smile on your face. Come on.
I think it's crazy because honestly, like when I go through between services, I'll walk through the sanctuary and I'll greet people by name, and I'll try and be energetic and, hey, how's it going? And I just find it funny because so many times you were saying it and Mike was demoing it for those that listen to this later. That's why I was laughing, because he's doing that same thing. But yeah, we need to get to the point, and being serious, we need to get to the point where we can have a conversation that isn't a hard no, but at the same time is not a disrespectful conversation, but a conversation to the point to address when something's not going to work. And I don't want to, and that's kind of circling back. I don't want to overlook that idea, but I can tell you from something that happened to me this past week. An individual, a couple weeks ago, was boasting at an outside church event, was boasting to one of my children that they bring a backpack to church every Sunday, and that in that backpack they bring a small machete. Now, I'm going to go. I'm going to go out here on a limb, but I'm going to say, if you are, I don't know, disclosing something like that to the kid of the safety director of the church probably isn't the smartest thing that has ever happened in this situation. Because my kids hate when I talk about them on the broadcast, but my kid came home and said, Dad, so-and-so was boasting today because he brings a knife to church every Sunday, and you haven't checked it, and he's gotten past security. And so I said, well, you know what, we'll address it. So the next time that he came in, which was actually a few days later, he had a backpack on, and I got a call from one of my guys that said, hey, so-and-so walked into the building with a backpack. Can you come with me? We need to do a bag search. And I said, sure, that's fine. So I walked up to him, and the first thing he said to me was, I said, hey, we need to check in your bag and tag it. It's a backpack. I said, is there anything in there that could be considered a weapon or something sharp that would poke us or hurt us? Oh, no, not at all. Okay. So my assistant director starts opening the bag and opening it so he's not digging down in. He opened it and then started kind of sliding stuff out. And the gentleman says, oh, wait a second. Yeah, there's a knife in there. And so I grabbed the guy that was doing it. And I said, stop. I said, let him take that knife out and give it to you. So he did. So they're doing that exchange. And at the same time, my hand is kind of going back a little bit, and I'm stepping back, to brace myself because I don't know what this guy's doing. So he kind of pulls the knife out, hands it to the other guy. The other guy kind of pulls it completely out of the bag. And we're talking probably a 10, 12-inch blade. And it was an awesome knife, I'll give that to the guy. Damascus steel, the whole 9 yards. But I said to him, okay, so here's the thing. I said, first of all, you have a car outside. You don't need a backpack in a Wednesday night service. There's nothing in here that is medication. There's no reason for it. I said, why do you have a knife? And he said, I carry it because I walk through bad neighborhoods to get here. And I said, okay, you walk through a bad neighborhood to get here, but someone always picks you up. So-and-so picks you up and drops you off. I said, and he just kind of looked at me, and I said, so you don't really need this knife with you in church. And he's like, no, you're right, I don't. And I said, okay, so here's the thing. I said, I can either lock it up and give it back to you as you're leaving the church. I will walk it out to your car with you, or you can go take it out to your car right now and lock it up. And he's like, okay, I'll take it out to my car. Okay, fine. So he's walking out. So it turns out that this gentleman, the weekend before, we had a connecting uh, ministry awareness day at our church. And so we had a safety table there, and we had people sign up to see if they wanted to help serve in the ministry and stuff. So long story short, he was one of the guys that signed up. So we're walking, and as we're walking out to the church, he's like, oh, hey, so when are we going to start our training? And I said, you know what? I said, to be perfectly honest, I said, I don't think this is the right ministry for you. I said, I would love to sit down and talk to you further about other ministries that maybe you could serve in that would benefit and that need people. You're welcome to sit down and talk to one of the pastors. But at this particular moment, I don't think this is the right ministry fit for you. And he took it well. And the next time he came in, he had no backpack. So I'm like, but the reality is, I could have said, no, you're not helping. Like, I could have been aggressive to him. I wasn't. I was very much open. Hey, I don't think this is a good fit. And, he was okay with that. And he was accepting because of how I handled that situation. So I don't say that as an example to be like, look at me, but I use that as an example to say, for the sake of the stuff that we deal with on a regular basis, you have two ways in most cases to handle something. You can do it aggressively, or you can do it in control, but not aggressively. And I think a lot of times, that's the balance we need to find with a lot of the situations that we deal with, regardless of your church. But I'll go ahead, and Paul, you were going to jump in there and say something.
Well, I love the way you guys were talking about this, because on the way out of the church, this young man came walking by, and I was explaining things to a new member of my parking lot team. And I paused the conversation, walked over, called him by name, shook his hand. I said, "What did you think?" And we have a thing called Starting Point, and he had all the paperwork for Starting Point, and he's going to attend one of our Starting Point meetings. It's a gathering. It's for new members, and he's looking to get plugged in as a volunteer. Mm-hmm. So if I had mishandled that, and it just dawned on me, John, as you were talking, and then I kind of was mentally unpacking it, as Mike likes to say, James, as you were talking about your conversation, I could have mishandled that to the point that the guy left in handcuffs, because I could have escalated the guy. He had a temper, I could tell. We all do. I could have tripped his trigger, because he's like, no, I just moved up here from whatever in Texas, and I literally am going to go see my nephew. You can't stop me. It didn't have to go that way, and we were able to defuse the bomb, and if there was going to be one. And I was just thinking about that, going, hey, I was excited that he was getting ready to go to Starting Point, but I actually directly impacted that by not being a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, honestly, that's, to me, that makes sense. But the crazy thing is, and I know this is true about de-escalation, I don't like confrontations. Like, I don't like when I have to get in people's faces, and or in close proximity, and have that serious conversation. It doesn't make me feel good. And a lot of times people will come to me and they'll say, oh, but go have this confrontation, with this person. And I'm like, but you're so good at it. And I'm like, I hate that. But if you train yourself and you do it frequently, and you look for the non-aggressive ways to address people, you just, to me, I mean, you get used to it, and you get that practice in, and it's on the fly, and you're good to go. And so I don't know. We have to take a quick break, but we'll come back, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts on that are, John, since you're the resident de-escalation expert. But so anyhow, if you're watching, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with you. All right, so we are back from the break. And as always, you can visit us at churchsafetyguys.com for some great resources. Please feel free to share this broadcast with your team and sign up for the Church Security Essentials Conference, October 2nd in Columbus, Ohio. You will see all four of us there, tentatively, Lord willing, if everything goes well. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us about that. We'd love to meet you guys in person and love to see you there. So for sure. So I'm going to throw it back over to John because we went to break before you could kind of follow up with that. But what are your thoughts on what I was saying before with the situation with the guy in the knife in the backpack?
What really jumped out at me immediately was a personal safety issue, and I don't know if someone's talked to you about it. He already gave you consent to go through his bag. I would encourage you and anyone else listening to this, don't let an unknown subject reach in and basically put their hands on that weapon. So I would ask, like, if you were to be in a similar situation, as soon as this individual said, well, oh, I got a knife in there, you could continue this conversation except by explain why he doesn't need it and just ask him, oh, can I go ahead and just pull it out? And do not let him get anywhere close to this bag. That's just a little thing. Otherwise, the fact that you gave him options is a phenomenal way to de-escalate a potentially confrontational situation. You're just not bringing this knife in here. Well, just like my buddy in the parking issue. Well, what are my options? Well, the option is, and you did it perfectly. Well, look, you can do this. You can either let me keep it and hang on to it, and I'll walk it out and give it to you, or you can take it out to your car. But I can't let you just have it here. You know, giving people options. That was very, very well done. Yeah, no, besides the personal safety issue and that is definitely an affirmation. I want other people to have basically learned from that. Give people options. I think even right out of the verbal judo handbook, I think the godfather of verbal judo and de-escalation and all that, I think on the list of things that people want and need, they want options. They want things explained to them. That goes back to your tone of voice, the words you use. You don't just tell someone something. They want things explained to them, and they want options. Well, sir, you know, we just have a policy about no knives in the church. So here's what we can do. I can hang on to it, or I can walk you out to the car to it. So bada boom, bada bing.
And then as opposed to our church has a mandate on no knives coming in.
Right.
Well, and it's interesting too. I'll throw this out there, and then I want to throw it to Paul because I know he's got something. But you know, today we have a newer family that's coming to our church, and they've jumped in. They've helped. They've gotten involved. Great husband and wife. You know, they've got great sons that they're doing a fantastic job, you know, raising, and they're always serving. You know, just a pleasure to be around this family. And I had walked up to the mom today because she was doing something else. And I said, you know, I just need to talk to you about something real quick because they know I'm the safety guy. And she said, well, yeah, what can I do for you? And I said, I just noticed that your son brought in a backpack into the sanctuary. And I said, here's our policy. Here's how we handle backpacks. And I said, you know, and she's like, well, he needs to carry that for medical. Like he's got an EpiPen and some other medical stuff in there. And I said, okay, that's awesome. I said, I understand that your son is probably not going to bring in something that's not appropriate for a church setting, even though we've had kids. And I said that, yeah, I said, even though we've had kids bring pellet guns and all sorts of stuff like that in. But I said, you know what? I said, let me get you a couple of our tags. You're welcome to put them on the backpack. And that way, when we come in, or if you leave them in the sanctuary, then nobody will mess with it. Like our team going through the sanctuary won't see backpacks and be concerned and then want to do a bag search because the tags actually say, you know, our church name, church logo, and bag's been searched. And it's a bright neon wristband that you would use like at a carnival or something like that. It probably cost us $6 to have a whole, you know, case of those printed. And as we're going through the church, a lot of us if we know of someone with that type of situation, will give them to them. So it's not like, a lot of times people with the bag stuff, people will say, well, you stop every single diaper bag, every single person. No, we don't. We look at what's unusual for our situation and what's unusual for our church. And when we see multiple red flags, that's when we kind of add things together and say, wait a second, this is not meeting a very good, whether you use the word profile or another word, this is not as safe as we would like it to be with this situation. So, Paul, you wanted to...
I'll jump in real quick. And
oh, yeah.
Please.
Paul, you brought up a great point, and I've shared this story before, is a woman carrying a kid's backpack and never dropped the kid off.
Yeah.
That's the red flag. That's a bad because it just, not because it's a kid's bag, but and not because of who brought it in. It's just the preponderance of evidence at that point says something doesn't seem right, and it doesn't look right. Therefore, we're going to go and proceed. I love that you have tags there, James, and proceed to tag the bag, because we've searched our volunteer bags multiple times because they've decided to put them in the wrong spot. They didn't leave it in the cubby in the volunteer room. They left it out on a chair, and I'm like, yes, of course my team's going through it.
Well, and the overlap of different people doing different things, at some point, if it gets set in there and I do a bag search, right, it gets put in our sanctuary. We go through that whole process. They walk away 5 minutes later. Another team member comes through and says, "Oh my goodness, there's a bag sitting there." And so, yeah, I mean, it's everybody on our team knows, look, if it's got a blue, fluorescent blue tag on it, don't mess with it. It's been checked out, because the only place people can get those from is me. Like, I'm the only one that gives out those tags. So, Paul, you were gonna.
Yeah, so I was keeping notes here. So you're preventing, James, duplicated wasted effort, because you're keeping people on the front lines by doing that. So to your point, Mike, you got to search the bag. To your point, James, it's tagged, and then John doesn't come along 10 minutes later and go, oh, crud, I've got to check this bag. And then I don't come along 15 minutes later. God bless you. And I don't come along 15 minutes later and search the bag. And there's a lot here that comes down to being teachable. And because I've had people, and we've talked about this at other times, John, you're a veteran of law enforcement and you're a military veteran. During your two very different careers, you're a pilot. Things change. Electronics change, technology changes, policies change for a reason, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. And one of the things that we have to be so careful, this goes back to books that you guys have written, we've got to be so careful to remain teachable, because if I reach a point and I say, well, that's stupid, I should really gut check myself, because I was warned by a guy that works in the insurance world, and he said, one of the things that you're going to see, we've seen it overseas, he said, we will probably see a day in the United States where it's really highly recommended that you have a dash cam in your car because of insurance fraud. And right. And so, and he and I started talking about, and this is a sacred cow, right? James, I'm about to slaughter a sacred cow. There are people that, right, they freak out if you say, I'm really thinking about buying a Motorola body camera to carry at church, and I can just have it inside my vest. And if something happens, I can flip it forward, pull my vest down and around it, and I can record something, because I'd like to be hands-free if I have to deal with something, instead of being like, smile, or having somebody designated to have a camera. There's a reason police officers wear body cameras. Am I saying it's a solution for every church? No, but I'm saying there may be a day, due to people causing confrontations, and there's a shift now. There are people that are stopping looking at municipalities as targets, and they're looking at companies and nonprofits as points to sue. Okay, the landscape of church safety is always going to be changing. And so if there was a day that mobile meth labs, backpack meth labs were not a thing, they're a thing. Mm-hmm. In my area, it's evolving away from that. Mm-hmm. But, there was a day that it was really hard to get a rifle in a backpack. It is not that complicated now. And so the landscape changes. And I guess all I'm saying is, one of the things that we as the church safety community always need to be mindful of is threats change, threats evolve, be ready for it, and be prepared to alter with it.
Yeah, Paul, you covered two good points there. And I think one is that you brought up the point of different environments, different jobs, you have to adapt, and how standard procedure for the military is different than a police officer, is different from running on a safety team, is different. And I've saw it just in the roles that I wear, the two different hats. So when I'm serving as a volunteer with the PD, okay, I have certain responsibility, but I don't have the same level of authority I have on the property of my church. And so the difference is, while the jobs overlap and while there's similarities of observation and responsibility, there's different levels of authority and different ways to respond and ways to carry yourself. So you have to prepare for that. And I'm going to circle that back to something John said earlier, is both approach and appearance. Is that first approach is as you're coming, is determining how do you dial that down. And I did the little dial earlier, is we're not shooting a sniper rifle from our post. We're actually engaging. So you have to dial that down and say, I need to adjust my scope. And my scope is now not this, hey, I'm responsible for this whole plane and I'm trying to keep track of everything that's going on, to now I'm having a human to human conversation. There's no reason, other than possible red flags, to start out any other way than human to human. And I think that's that approach and so forth there. And I love, James, that you talked about the choices. I mean, think, for all of us that have kids and so forth, what child listens to anything but a choice, frankly? When you tell them no, they'll dig their heels in and find a way to bargain, to blackmail, to this, to that, to pout, to scream. You know what? That's going to just be an escalation. So I think at the end of the day, giving them an out, giving them an opportunity to feel like they were heard, to save face, frankly. I think some people sit there, they feel backed into a corner, and they just want an opportunity to realize, oh, crap, yeah, you're right, but they don't want to admit it. So without calling them out, without putting a shining flashlight in their face, without actually getting to the point where they now feel threatened, like any normal animal would be, because they're, yeah, exactly. We've given them an out. That choice is an out.
You can trigger what they call fear aggression by making them feel like they're cornered, and they will escalate it just to save face, to save pride, ego, or whatever. And the more you can try to avoid putting them in that situation, the better. As a matter of fact, I want to touch upon this real quick, talking about videotaping. Until such time that everyone's walking around with a body cam or something, this is a very antagonistic motion now, to walk up to someone. Okay, that's very antagonistic. However, and I may even show this video at the conference. I had an incident a number of years ago where I went up to approach an unknown car, an unknown man in our parking lot, and I basically activated the video camera, but I held it at my side. It looks very unassuming and so on. I'm just a guy holding a camera. Yes, I'd rather have my hands free, but I got to work with what I got. And so I've got my hands, I maintain a reactionary gap as I make contact with him. You hear me narrate the vehicle registration plate, and I describe him as I'm walking up to him, just like I did as a cop. I'm calling these things out. And in the event that I have to, I'm very adept at letting go of the camera and going for my gun. So, but anyway, and then later, once I go back to my computer, I can flip the image, okay? And I may even, it's one of the things I'm contemplating showing at the conference as an example of how to make contact with somebody, an unknown, because you had a guest on a number of months ago. Awesome guy. Military infantry background. I knew he was infantry even before he said he was infantry, because he had used some terminology and all that comes from the infantry world. And Paul had made a comment about a DLR, and with ministry in mind, you guys made contact with this individual, and your guest made the comment, Paul, that's the difference between you and me. I probably would have just grabbed him and yanked him into a room to talk to him. But that is where military veterans who come from Afghanistan and Iraq are going to go with it. And what I'm trying to encourage people who are back stateside and not in theater anymore, slow down, guys. You're home. I'm not saying that's not possible, that's going to be a possible threat. I'm just saying that the probability is low now, and that it's higher possibility that person is just someone who needs ministry. not to be yanked into a private room. Now, here's my concern. I know where he was coming from with that, but because I still run into some churches that have people that have this very hard, defined way of handling situations, I believe some people who watched and heard that would have just keyed in on that. They wouldn't have keyed in on Paul's discussion of ministry, but would have keyed in, this is how I would have done it. And so I'm kind of concerned about that, but I encourage people, hey, slow down, folks. We're stateside now. We're stateside. It's ministry.
We've had a couple of conversations over the last couple of years about using cameras, using phones. I can speak for all three of us on this side, John, when I say that we all like to have our hands free, right? I don't like walking into a situation without being able to, address that accordingly. So maybe if you're going to use a cell phone, stick it in your pocket or have it low where it's not noticed, because I don't have a lot of triggers, but if somebody's holding a phone out like this in front of me, that's going to be really irritating to me. And what you have to realize too is, for us, the cameras that we use are literally about 2 or 3 inches, and they clip to our clothing. And honestly, most people don't even notice they're there. And so it's one of those things where I think we've had a knee-jerk reaction. Now, I've spoken to a lot of mega churches that don't use them, that are starting to use them. We've started to see major media players like Motorola specifically designed and brought to market 2 different body cameras for church security people. So you can't tell me with the ever-evolving, ever-changing church safety and security that down the road, that's not a transition that we're going to see. Because, if a multi-billion-dollar company like Motorola comes out with something for churches, there's a market there.
I'm all about videos. I really am. Even my department started implementing body cams after I retired, but I was always happy to activate the video camera in my car because it could record my voice even if I was in the basement in the house. And the audio is just as critical because you can hear what's being said, you can hear what the officers are dealing with in the basement, even though you don't actually see what's going on. Hearing it and hearing how it transpired or dissolved or escalated is just as critical. So I'm all about that, and I have no problem with that. I'm just trying to get people to understand that there's ways of using your camera as a cell phone without being antagonistic about it and holding it up in their face, So Paul I think he had a follow-up on something.
You guys are making great points because, John, the way you held the phone down was innocuous. It was not threatening. James, the way you held the phone up, if somebody slaps $1,000 phone out of your hand, do you think you might get a little hot when your phone goes bouncing 5 times? And we put ourselves in situations where we actually can cause it to escalate by doing something stupid. I got to get in front of the camera, but we do something stupid with our camera phone, and then somebody knocks it out of the way, and now we're hot and we're not rational. And so that's a thing that we can do to ourselves. And then the landscape of church safety is always going to change, and we are probably going to see a large increase in lawsuits, especially against mega churches, because they see deep pockets. I had somebody turn to me today, and our church is not ornate. There's nothing gold in it, but this guy was talking about, he's like, wow, this place had to be expensive. And he was a guest, and the attitude was, oh, gee, it's yet another church that spends. And I said, that's insulation. It's just painted black. That's an unfinished concrete floor. We honestly spend our money on people. Notice you parked on the grass today when you came in. And he laughed. So yes, the landscape will always change, but bringing it back to John, to what you do. So I'm going to give you a little commercial for a second, but de-escalation will never go out of style. There was a time in the history of France, I believe it was France, where the king required that all of his knights, when they met, they had to take a cord and tie their sword into its scabbard because they were so hot-tempered. And it was either him or another king. The reason we have kitchen knives, table knives that are like butter knives that are rounded on the end, his guys would stab each other at the dinner table. What? And they would stab each other. So now they were smacking each other with a blunt blade. People have tempers. and blood is hot, and we've got alpha males and alpha females that they have the heart to guard the flock, and we need to condition ourselves and train under stress. I was a huge proponent, and there's nothing wrong with verbal judo. I read the book about 5 times. It has saved my butt more than once. But having watched just the videos that you give away, John, de-escalation under stress is like training with a firearm under stress. Now you can actually do it under stress. And I love that level of training. And I'm actually working right now. John, I talked to you about this briefly, but if I can figure out a way, I want to bring you to my area and have all my departments benefit, because why should you be a 5-year police officer on the job and then go, oh, because honestly, not a lot of our officers are getting this in the academy. Not good, not good stuff in the academy. And I'm not knocking the academy. I'm going to be going to the academy, God willing, at some point. But to bring that all the way back around, if we're in church safety, why shouldn't we be training under stress? Why shouldn't we be bringing in gentle response? Because we're going to have these aha moments and go, that just came out of my mouth. I blew a kiss at a guy that was high on meth and ran out in front of me. And my brain went, because he ran out in front of me, he attacked my car, he was slamming the hood, he hit the mirror, and he was trying to get the door open. I'm on the phone with dispatch, and I'm truncating the story. It's Reader's Digest. And I looked up, and my brain went, well, you can't flip him off, and you're not going to scream at him, and you're not going to. And without thinking, I hit this retarded response, and I went, that didn't de-escalate squat. And I was like, wow, gee, here I thought I had a handle on my emotions and my reactions. Well, he assaulted my vehicle. I had to swerve to miss him. He's physically challenging me to a fight. I realize if he can gain interest to my vehicle, or if he can figure out a way to pin me in, I've fought tweakers. So my blood pressure and my adrenaline shooting up, it's not fun. And so I literally went at this guy. That didn't help anything. And if you've never been put under stress, which is what John's going to do with his team, and these guys know how to put you under stress because they're all cops. They've all been there. They know exactly what to say. So we owe it to ourselves, because I've literally had aha moments at the scenes of situations going, that just came out of my mouth, because you don't know when you don't know. So anyway, James.
Sure. No, I'm going to turn it over to Mike to close this out for the evening, but it's good stuff for sure. And I think, honestly, I love the fact that John, that you put out the videos and you share those, and because I think it's quality content, but as much as I think that that's quality content, doing the scenarios is just so much more instructive and helpful, because if you don't get past your awkwardness of being in that situation, you will never grow. You will never go beyond, and you won't get used to handling that situation when it comes. And I'll tell you, I mean, we've had this discussion numerous times on the broadcast, etc., with churches that, I would say right now, even coming out of COVID to an extent, medical and de-escalation mental health are probably like the 3 biggest components that are tied together with church safety. And, I would love to give a couple extra examples, but, for the sake of that, we really are out of time for tonight. So you'll have to come down to our October 2nd conference where we have John in person, and we can be like, hey, this happened right where you're sitting.
Yeah. Every time I'm on with you guys, it's amazing how fast this hour goes. And I know we're a little over, but man, you could tell that we could just keep talking. Because there's so much to unpack, as Mike likes to say. There's so much to it. And there's so many variables. And this is why I encourage people, don't lock yourself into a course of action. You need to make sure you stay flexible and adapt to the situation you're given at that moment.
For sure.
Hallelujah.
I'll turn it over to you, Mike.
All right. For sake of time, we'll go right to prayer. And John, thanks as always for coming on the show. We appreciate when you're here. So,
my pleasure.
Heavenly Father, we ask you to bless the week ahead. We thank you for the opportunity to each and every week come before an audience. Some days I wonder why we have, other times I understand why we have. And we're here to try to equip and inform and really inspire folks that are out there protecting the flock. We do that each and every Sunday. It's not easy, but we are trying to do your work. We ask you to bless those that serve in that role, whether they are serving in a safety team, whether they're serving on a police force, or whether they're serving overseas in our military. Bless those families that are now facing the ultimate sacrifice this week, and those events that are going to unfold, and lives changed. In Jesus' name.
Yes, Lord.
Amen.
Amen.
Hallelujah. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you're listening at home, I do want to say next week I'm really excited about it. We actually have Jack Peters will be joining us, and Jack is actually the president and instructor with the American Explosives Group. So that's all I need to tell you about how that broadcast. No, I'm joking. He's going to talk to us about
next week will be the bomb.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
He's got a whole week. I should have called. You know what, Jack, if you're listening, I'm going to apologize for Paul ahead of time. I should have warned him. So Jack is a demolition expert that does classes, and he's a believer. He goes and talks to churches about suspicious packaging. And if the name sounds familiar at all to you, he actually was also on the Discovery Channel. So he is he's got a show on the Discovery Channel and I believe Netflix where he does demolition for different people in that show. He's I think it's Treasure Quest Jack is the name. So I reached out to him, met him, and he's going to join us, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. So you don't want to miss it. In the meantime, like I said, if we can help you, if any of us, if the four of us can help you, please feel free to reach out to us. And don't forget to get your tickets for the Church Security Essentials Conference, October 2nd, Columbus, Ohio. And you can do that through our website or churchsecurityessentials.info. And we still do have some tickets available. You don't want to miss it. We are filling up very quickly. And it's not because Paul's going to be there with his punny jokes. We have quality conference folks that are going to be there, and we'd love to meet you guys. So
I'm just excited about getting to do my stand-up routine. I'm just saying. So,
oh my goodness, have a great week. God bless. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, guys.
Thank you for joining the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys, sponsored by Checker. We hope that you found it informative, and we appreciate your feedback. Be sure to share our broadcast with your teams. Join the discussion online, and for other great resources, download the Church Security app or visit our website at churchsafetyguys.com. Remember, keep a servant's heart, a mindset of ministry, and semper disciplina. Always be training. Have a blessed week.